don't think Neville Goddard gets enough recognition for his teachings on the law of assumption for this one thing that I think so many masterful manifestation teachers forget to mention. For as much as Neville teaches us that our imagination creates, he also goes further by teaching us that as we see a better life for ourselves, he teaches that we should practice Christ consciousness. We should use our imagination not just for ourselves and our own benefit, but also to lift others on high. Let's talk about it. Neville is actually one of my favorite teachers as it relates to anything Christ related, because I really feel like he really truly gets it. When you are doing all of your imaginal acts, it's so easy to make assumptions about people in your life because you feel like they're showing up a particular way, or you are judging them based on your own perception of things. But what I love about Neville is when he tells you to go a step further. And rather than see yourself as being treated a certain way by someone, imagine the ideal case scenario. Imagine that person responding to you cheerfully, saying lovely things to you, being kind towards you. Imagine more lovely things in relation to other people. He actually goes into different stories where he would talk about how he envisioned higher things for people who would come to him with problems. Let's say someone was unemployed. He talked about how you can see someone as being gainfully employed by playing out an imaginal scene in your mind of them saying how happy they are in their job or how wonderful things are going for them. He also talked about someone who could perhaps be sick. And as you hear them tell you stories about their sickness, you use your imaginal acts to create a scene where they are telling you they've never felt better, where their health is actually thriving. I find the aspect on health to be so fascinating because having a background in the healthcare field, I often hear about how people are diagnosed with different chronic illnesses and diseases and so quickly succumb to whatever their prognosis is. Prognosis meaning whatever the doctor says they found and what the statistics are. But coming into the works of laws of assumption, I've learned to transform and transmute some of that kind of content for myself, and I can see how it is playing out in my world when I can be the person who someone in my life might have an issue with their health, and then I can then see them on high, rejoicing in their health, rejoicing in their well-being. And I've literally seen things play out where things turned around for them. And so it makes me really, really curious to know the story of Jesus Christ and how he was known as a healer and how he was known as a conqueror on behalf of other people, and why we revere him so much to the point where we created a religion around him. I love how Neville teaches us to be more Christ consciousness and use our minds, use our creative abilities, not just for ourselves, but to lift others on high. And we can actually see these things play out for people. I had relatives come to me recently with great news after experiencing bridges of incidents. And I would find myself being the encourager. And I would find myself going into my imagination and seeing things improved for them. And I would tell them things like, don't focus on the how, just continue to move forward, because I trust my creative abilities and I trust the practice that works for me and myself. I trust it also to work for others. So guys, this stuff is really, really powerful stuff when we can learn to demonstrate it and implement it, not just on behalf of ourselves and our own quality of life, but for others. I remember when I would go to the church, I learned about intercessory prayer, where you would go to an elder or have someone that you trust who you know they have a deep spiritual connection with the divine. You would go to them and share whatever is bothering you at that time, and they would pray on your behalf, and we call that intercessory prayer. And I remember leaning on the scripture that talked about when two or more come together, so it shall be. And I remember leaning on that scripture. And so to learn things from the perspective of how Neville teaches the law of assumption and how he encourages us to be more Christ conscious, it really is truly inspiring, because it just confirms to me that although we have different labels, although we have different meanings and titles and things that we slap on what we call religion, at the core of it all, it's so much the same. And so I'd love to hear more dialogue being shared about how Neville and Law of Assumption was really teaching us to be the alchemist of our lives, teaching us to be like Christ. And as Christ said, that which I do, you can do greater. And I think for centuries we didn't fully understand that. And now we've been given teachings like Law of Assumption that help us understand our true power and our true role in the whole of it. So shout out to Neville. I always say this, one of my favorite teachers of all time, one of the best to ever do it, period, poo. Shout out to him for giving us a blueprint on how to demonstrate Christ consciousness. Heavy on the how, because demonstrating is where it's at. And people just need to know how to tap into themselves to be more Christ-like, to be more of an alchemist, rather than being a victim of their lives. This is your reminder. You got this.